recap some of the picks for you. Picks 8 to 14. Number 15, Toronto Maple Leaf pick. Ware just taken, Jeff Ware, and also, boy, just a great bit of bait tossed out there by Cliff Fletcher.
Gives us the unofficial word on a trade for a veteran defenseman. I'll be perfectly honest, Paul, I don't know who the defenseman is, but if they've had to trade a player off the roster, I know that there's been some teams inquiring about Benoit Hogue's availability. You know, Hogue had a bad playoff with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but he's obviously a proven 30 to 40 goal scorer, and there may be a market for him there if the Leafs can bolster that defense. And that is Cliff Fletcher's goal today, is to come out of here with not one defenseman, but maybe two veteran defensemen.
Belongs to the Buffalo Sabres.
Buffalo Sabres just picked at 14 because of that deal they made involving Alexander McGillney earlier today with the Vancouver Canucks. They took Vancouver's first-round pick, 14th overall. Here is Buffalo's pick, number 16. And I'm going to say it again. I've said it for the last 4 or 5 picks.
Peter Sikora
is still there.
And so is Brad Church, a very impressive two-way winger with the Prince Albert Raiders. Might fit right into what Coach John Muckler's trying to do here. Tough day for Peter Sikora. A lot of people thought.
Let's try to explain why his stock has dropped so much.
Well, he separated his shoulder at the World Junior Championships and never played a game. He had a shoulder surgery. There's no reason to believe that his shoulder isn't 100% healthy, but he's a smallish, offensive European, and that sometimes works against you. And it's really, the draft is a funny thing the way it works. I know for a fact that there were 2 or 3 teams up around in the top 6 or 7 who have Peter Sikora right behind the guy that they took. So it was so very, very close. If one of the teams up there hadn't gotten the player that they wanted, then the next player that they wanted was Peter Sikora, and he very easily could have been taken with the 4th, 5th, or 6th, or 7th pick overall. But now all of a sudden here he is sitting at number 16, still waiting for his name to be called. It's got to be disconcerting to him. But on a team that just lost Alexander McGillney, I'll tell you what, you've lost a lot of skill and a lot of goals. Sabres could do a lot worse than to take a gifted young center who a lot of people believe is just, he excels offensively at every level of hockey he's ever played at.
Select from Beauport, Martin Biron.
So the second goaltender in this draft is taken. Jean-Sébastien Giguère from the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League was taken earlier. And it is Biron, the man who he battled for much of the year for the title of #1 goaltender in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. Martin played with the Beauport Harfangs.
Where's number 00 for the Beauport Harfangs? I asked him if that was his desired goals against average, and he thought that was pretty good. He got no particular reason why he wears that number. He says when he came to camp and training camp, they gave it to him just as a training camp number, and he liked it, did well, made the team, and decided that that was a good enough number for training camp. He was going to keep it. And I'll tell you what, this kid is 6'3", 150 odd pounds, and he obviously has to get a little stronger and a little more physically mature before he's going to play in the National Hockey League. And when you're 6'3" and you're a stand-up goaltender, there's something to be said for the amount of net that you cover, even if you are 150 pounds. And we've seen the importance of goaltenders, Paul, in the playoffs, and I think more and more you're going to see more goaltenders going higher in the first round on a regular basis. We've now had 2 goaltenders taken in the first 16 picks, and when you see the job that Martin Brodeur has done with the New Jersey Devils, the job that Felix Potvin has done with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we go back to it again, just a goaltending factory coming out of Quebec. The Sabres now pick themselves up in Jay McKee, a very good young defensive prospect.
The Buffalo Sabres,
rebuilding from the back end of a rebuilding process that started today with the trading of Alexander McGillney to the Vancouver Canucks. They picked up Mike Wilson, a 6'6" guy from the Sudbury Wolves, another project on defense. So they're building from the back out. And John Muckler, who for so many years was an offensive-minded coach with the Edmonton Oilers, and why wouldn't he be with that talent, is now looking to turn the defensive makeover of the Buffalo Sabres.
Well, the trend towards taking a goaltender really started to creep up the last couple of years, and we're seeing it continue this year. Jamie Storr, who's going to be a great National Hockey League goaltender, I believe, was taken by the LA Kings. Eric Fichaud was taken by the Toronto Maple Leafs, has subsequently been traded. Mentioned Yevgeny Ryabchikov earlier on. Russian-developed goaltender taken by the Boston Bruins. Trevor Kidd was taken very high in the draft, now with the Calgary Flames. And next up, the new logoed Washington Capitals.
The 17th selection in the 1995 NHL entry draft belongs to the Washington Capitals.
and that is Jack Button.
So we're going to throw Peter Sikora's name back up for consideration?
Not even going to mention it. Who? Jack Button walking up there with the jersey will make the selection for the Washington Capitals, who signed Brendan Witt, their first-round pick a couple of years ago in 1993, signed him at the deadline.
Well, there's another European that the Washington Capitals do like in addition to Peter Sikora, would be Dmitry Nabokov. Big, strong, physical center, plays more of a North American style.
David Poyle looking for work ethic and character. Would give up a little along the skill line, so he says. And still waiting for Pat Peake to become the prolific scorer at the professional level that he was at the junior level.
I'll tell you what, they've got tremendous depth on defense now with Brendan Witt, Nolan Baumgartner, Calle Johansson, Sylvain Cote.
Yeah, you'll see Witt step right into the lineup next year. That'll have Jim Schoenfeld smiling, you bet.
Brendan Witt not quite as big as Jim Schoenfeld was when Schoenfeld played in the National Hockey League, but I'll tell you what, they both give those bone-jarring checks, and it's a big relief for the Washington Capitals organization to get Brendan Witt into the fold. I'll tell you, Paul, it was like a fire drill last night, watching the last few dying seconds to try to get Brendan Witt. There was a jammed fax machine that almost cost the Washington Capitals the approval to get Brendan Witt signed by midnight. Otherwise, he would have re-entered the draft today.
Yeah, that was the deal, in case you're unfamiliar with the situation. He had to be signed, along with Todd Bertuzzi, another player in a similar situation, drafted 2 years ago, had to be signed by midnight Eastern last night, or else they went back into the draft this year as virtually free agents. A second-round pick would have basically been the compensation.
There it is, the new logo. Big improvement over the word capital spelled out with a hockey stick.
Missed the red, white, and blue, though, I've got to say.
Absolutely. Didn't change it to the Washington Screaming Eagles. They still are the Capitals, but I'm sure that's a logo that'll meet with greater approval from the young consumers out there that just coerce mom and dad to fork over the money for a new jersey.
The ubiquitous aqua teal color that we're seeing everywhere also in there.
The Capitals are very pleased to select from the Prince Albert Raiders of the Western Hockey League, left winger Brad Church.
Big Brad Church, who didn't win the Masters despite the green jacket there, although I understand he's a pretty good golfer. 6'1", 210 pounds. And he was bothered this year with a shoulder injury, which cost him a shot at Canada's national team for the World Junior Championship. But a big, strong, and someone the Capitals hope will be dominant forward.
Well, he's the pride of Dauphin, Manitoba. And he is the big prototypical pro winger. Comes in with that hard shot from the left wing. Really likes to mix it up. Some scouts have compared him favorably to Keith Tkachuk, the very feisty captain of the Winnipeg Jets. And there's no question that the shoulder injury did bother him over the course of the season. The Washington Capitals, like every other team here, the theme today is size and strength. Everybody wants to get bigger. They want to get stronger. You see guys like Bill Guerin patrolling the wing for the New Jersey Devils. Nothing flashy, just out there doing their job and making it difficult for the skilled players to operate. And as a result, a skilled player like Peter Sikora sitting on the sideline while the Churches happily see their man go off to Landover, Maryland for Washington Capitals.
Brad's offensive totals a little bit low, but in the same situation as Steve Kelly, his teammate. A very powerful Prince Albert team offensively, very deep, and that's going to take away a little bit from your ice time and your chance to score.
Well, I'm with Mr. and Mrs. Church right now. First of all, congratulations. How do you feel?
Well, I feel very, very proud. It's just great.
Have you ever been to Washington, and have you ever met Bill Clinton?
No, I haven't, but I would love to.
Well, you're probably going to Washington, and might not meet Bill Clinton, but you'll probably meet Abe Pollin. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Abe probably a little more popular than Bill right now.
Well, congratulations, Brad. You were another one yesterday who said you weren't quite sure where you're going to be going. What do you know about the Washington Capitals?
I was down there a couple weeks. It's a real nice city. Jack Button, real nice guy. It seemed like a real class organization, and I'm really excited. This is great.
How much a factor is that size and strength of yours, do you think? Is that the biggest asset you bring into the National Hockey League?
For sure. I mean, it's my total game. If I don't play physical, I'm pretty much useless out there, and I hope to bring that to the Washington Capitals.
You look pretty excited now.
I am. This is the best.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And speaking of popularity, he could be a real popular guy on a team throwing out those bone-crunching, bone-jarring checks. 6'1", 210 pounds.
Nice to see Brad Church go there, and it's also nice to see Jack Button with the Washington Capitals. Jack collapsed at a tournament in Germany and was actually critically ill there for a while. It was touch and go. He's got a chronic blood disorder that they're treating, and the prognosis is excellent. It's great to see Jack Button back with the Washington Capitals. I'm sure the entire hockey community agrees.
He's been with the organization for years. Is he a day oneer? He'd be pretty close to.
I used to be with NHL Central Scouting, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he and David Poyle.
NHL entry draft belongs to the Stanley Cup champion New Jersey Devils.
The Devils with the next pick. I wonder if they'll go for a big player, too.
Well, they've got an awful lot of big players. They've got some great skill players, too. David Conti, the chief scout, has always been a guy who's likes size and strength, but also very impressed with skill. So Peter Sikora has got to be a consideration for them at this point.
A big physical center. Really? Ask Scott Bowman about that. They give him to the coaches to raise, and the New Jersey coaching staff, Jacques Lemaire, Larry Robinson, have done a tremendous job of developing the talent on that team. What a job they've done with Scott Niedermayer.
And they won the Calder Cup of the American League this year and won the Stanley Cup. Vadim Sherefyanov came and joined the Albany River Rats late in the season. He's projected to join the team next year and play on a regular basis. We've got some good young defensemen in the system. Very well constructed, and constructed largely through the draft. And there's the man who puts it all together. David Conti says, we adopt the children, give them the coaches to raise. David Conti had a great line once about the vagaries of the 18-year-old draft. He says it's like trying to go into about 10th or 11th grade in high school and pick out the guys who are going to be the doctors and the dentists just by looking at their marks. And that's very much what this draft is like. Unlike so many of the drafts, the NBA draft, the NFL draft, most of the players that are drafted here today are not ready to step in and play in the National Hockey League. In fact, there may only be 1 or 2 or 3 of them that are actually playing in the league next year. This is more akin to the baseball-style draft where the players are going to ferment for a while. They're going to develop their talents before they burst onto the scene.
Yeah, it is a real crapshoot. That's a great analogy from David Conti. Let's see who they take.
The New Jersey Devils are proud to select from the Detroit Vikings, Petri Sikora.
That'd be the Detroit Vipers, the other team in Detroit, and it's Peter Sikora who finally gets taken. You said they like skilled players. They have one here. Tremendously skilled Peter Sikora only played 29 games this year because of that shoulder injury that he suffered. But I believe, going this late, I think he's a steal.
Absolutely, and I know that the New Jersey Devils are going to go down and talk to their local media, and General Manager Lou Lamoriello and David Conti are going to say, we couldn't believe that Peter Sikora was there. And, you know, general managers and chief scouts say that every year, but I'll tell you what, in this case, it goes without saying that it's true, because a lot of people really believe that Peter Sikora, some people projected that he might fall out of the top 10, but nobody in their wildest imagination would have dreamt that he'd go down as far as number 18.
Do you think that his stock dropped a little bit, Bob, because Radek Bonk, a guy who the Ottawa Senators took in a similar situation, not with the injury, but Radek, rather than playing junior hockey, played professional hockey in the International League with the same team, actually no, with a different team in the same league, the International League, and Bonk didn't exactly explode onto the scene with Ottawa this year. He was very underwhelming at times. So do you think people were thinking about that when they were thinking about Peter Sikora?
There's no question about that. I think, though, there's a big difference between Peter Sikora and Radek Bonk. One of them is the negative. Radek Bonk is a big, strong guy, and Peter Sikora is not. Peter Sikora is listed as 5'11", 167 pounds, and that's not big by National Hockey League standards in a year when the emphasis is on size and strength. We're going to hammer that point home 1,000 times today, but I'll tell you what, there's no substitute for skill either. And this kid, when he played as a 16-year-old in the World Junior Championships, he scored goals and was a point producer. He would have been a point producer in this year's World Junior Championships if he hadn't separated his shoulder. He scored goals and points with the Detroit Vipers, had a good year with them, 12 goals, 17 assists, and 29 points in 29 games. People talk about the attitude of European players. I talked to Rick Dudley about this player. Rick Dudley, the coach of the Detroit Vipers, does not tolerate loafers, does not tolerate guys that aren't coachable, and Rick Dudley says he can't imagine anybody having a problem with this guy's coachability.
Well, I'm with Peter and David Conte right now. First of all, Peter, congratulations on going to the Stanley Cup champions. How do you feel?
Oh, I feel great. This is the best day in my life, and I really happy to go to New Jersey. This is the best day.
Are you healthy now? You feel good?
Yeah, I feel much better. You know, it's pretty hard just sit there and wait for some team, and now I feel all great.
David, are you surprised that he was there?
Well, I don't know. Nothing ever really surprised me, but I'm very pleased he was there.
How much of an opportunity did you have to watch him all year? And what do you like about this guy? There's a lot to like.
Well, it's not just this year. It's over a couple years. And he's got speed. He plays with enthusiasm. And he's got personality on the ice. And we can all use those talents.
Going to the Stanley Cup champions. What a thrill.
And with me now is the general manager, Lou Lamoriello, who made that pick. A lot of us are surprised Peter Sikora was still around. How surprised were you?
Well, we were very happy that he was there. Last year, we had liked him a lot. You know, it's only 1 month to determine whether he could get drafted or not. And we had him rated pretty highly, so we were delighted to have him there, and we feel very good about it, especially being a center iceman.
Obviously, his stock dropped because of the injury. How concerned are you in weighing this out?
Well, we did the ample testing, I think, as a lot of other people. We feel very comfortable that he's fine, and we look forward to having him. We're just delighted that we were able to get him.
Not bad for the Stanley Cup champs. Thank you.
Thank you.
And there aren't many with a better eye for talent than David Conte with New Jersey, which leads you to believe Sikora could be a real steal. We are through 18 picks, the 1995 NHL entry draft on TSN and ESPN2. We'll be right back.
When it comes to wet roads, most high-performance tires find themselves in something of a rut, incapable of performing efficiently in anything but a rather lackluster straight line. One tire, though, has turned the corner. The new Avid MD H4 all-season performance tire from Yokohama. It took on the competition and won. High performance has a new definition.
Give me 10 more good reps, man. That's it. Yeah, good. No, that's not it. I'll tell you what it is. Now give me one more. One more.
With 33% more carbos than Gatorade, it's Powerade.
Give me 10 more good reps, man.
You know, Linda's been my barber. Stylist for years. Months. And a while back, she told me.
Stop squirming.
No. She said I should do something about my flakes. I said, get a new barber? She said, get new Head and Shoulders. I said, you're serious? She said, yeah. Now it has Micro D, which fights flakes better without stripping your hair of the oils it needs. So my hair feels soft. No flakes. And I owe it all to my stylist.
New Head and Shoulders, because great hair can't have flakes.
Hello from Plank Road, where our man Paul has some visitors, the Plank Road Polar Bears. Each year, the polar bears seek ultimate refreshment by throwing themselves into icy cold waters. We suggest an alternative. Ice Brewed Ice House. Ice brewed so there's never any watered down taste, just more of what you want in a beer. Go. Ice Brewed Ice House. Icy smooth refreshment without the annoying frostbite. Thanks and enjoy.
19th selection in the 1995 NHL entry draft belongs to the Chicago Blackhawks.
Up next, Chicago. And by the way, just as an aside, the Toronto Maple Leafs announcing a trade for a veteran defenseman. And we're trying to ferret out who that veteran defenseman is. We take a look at Chicago's team needs. They are an older team, that's for sure.
Well, you've got to look hard at a center and defenseman. You always take the best, get your assets higher. Bob Murray. Chicago Blackhawks are a team that are very interested. They are buyers right now in the market. They believe they have a good team. They believe they have a team that can win the Stanley Cup in the next little while, as they introduced Eric Daze into the playoffs this year. Ethan Morrow, Steve McLaren, a big tough defenseman from the North Bay Centennials. And this is a team that's going to be very interested in making some very big and bold moves. They've got a new coach in Craig Hertzberg. But a team that's not going to sit back and wait for the future. They believe the future is now, and they're going to be putting on a big press the next little while. They made significant attempts to try and get the second pick overall from the New York Islanders.
That is Bob Pulford, by the way.
And at this point in time, if the gentleman standing behind Bob Pulford looks a little familiar to you, he should. It's Dave Keon Jr., the son of Dave Keon Sr. Of course, there's a little connection right there, and if there isn't a striking resemblance, that looks like Dave Keon and Bob Pulford. Looks like the 1967 Leafs are having a reunion at the Chicago table right now. But I'll tell you, these are uncharted waters right now. The draft is highly subjective at this point. I mean, fairly accurate, reasonably accurate up to the first 14 or 15 picks as to the players that are going. Right now, as we round out this first round, with another, 7 picks left in the first round, there's a pool of anywhere from 20 to 30 players that teams are considering. They're going to go all over the map. Chicago Blackhawks, I think all things being equal, would like to get a big defenseman. Defense is a strength of theirs, but it's also a bit of a concern in terms of the age of their defenseman.
Well, if you're looking at a defenseman, Jason Doig would be a candidate, although he's a bit of a project, but he's big, 6'3", 216 pounds. If you're looking for a forward,
Dmitry Nabokov.
Dmitry Nabokov would be the man.
And there's their big center that we talked about. Not at all a prototypical Russian-style player. This guy is much more of a North American style. Nabokov is big and strong and plays a physical game.
Exactly. He lacks the pure skill, but he's a real catalyst, not unlike Lemieux and the New Jersey Devils. It's a favorable comparison. He's good in the corners. He's good down low. He likes to mix it up and make things happen, and sometimes that can make up for a lack of pure offensive touch.
6'2", 187 pounds.
And actually a line mate of another player who has yet to go in this draft, but could go very shortly, Alexei Morozov, both playing for Krylia Sovetov in Russia.
Well, teams are really split as to who they like better, Nabokov or Morozov. Anytime you get 2 draft-eligible players who play on the same line, on the same team, there's going to be inevitable comparisons. Morozov is much more the high-skill Alexei Kovalev-type winger. Really fancy with the puck, blinding speed, very creative. Nabokov is much more certain in terms of his play, more of a plotter in terms of a skater, but also more physical, a little more aggressive. The knock on him is he sometimes has a tendency to get a little bit lazy. But again, we hark back to the size and strength factor at 6'2", 287 pounds. You look at a guy like that and you wonder if 5 or 6 years down the road, he might not be doing a job for the Chicago Blackhawks the way Bobby Holik did a job for the New Jersey Devils. The difference, Holik was originally projected when he was first drafted by the Hartford Whalers in the first round a number of years ago as a big offensive superstar, the big, almost an Eric Lindros type player.
Okay, but you're not going to see Dmitry step in and play for the Hawks next year.
No, not at all.
He's a project. But he's a big project, literally and figuratively, perhaps. 6'2", 187 pounds.
The Chicago Blackhawks
Russian development. Well, you see so many players the last few years since the world has changed, since the Iron Curtain has come down, just an influx of great talent coming into the NHL. And Nabokov maybe another fine example of that talent coming out of Russia, the Ukraine, Czech Republic. Here's Rod Smith.
And with the new head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks, Craig Hartsburg, we'd heard the Hawks wanted a little more depth on the blue line. Tell me about Nabokov and taking him instead.
Well, he's a big, strong center iceman, and he's probably the best young player in Russia, so we're pretty excited about having him.
And just a word on you and this new team of yours taking shape. You like what you have?
Well, definitely. It's a great opportunity to come to a great organization like the Chicago Blackhawks, and I'm excited about it.
How much input have you had just coming in at the last second into this draft?
Oh, not very much. They've asked about some kids maybe that played in the Ontario Hockey League, and I can give them some help there, but not much input really.
You've had success in junior hockey. What's the biggest challenge jumping into the NHL?
The biggest challenge is being in the National Hockey League. It's the best league in the world. You got the best players and the best coaches.
Thanks. Good luck to you, Craig.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Tremendous success at the junior level. Craig was the coach of the year in the Ontario Hockey League with Guelph.
Okay. Craig Hartsburg. Nice to meet you. Congratulations.
The Calgary Flames will make the 20th selection in the 1995 NHL entry draft.
Ah, yes. It's the old Calgary-Edmonton rivalry. We're in Edmonton, and in case there was any doubt, you know for sure when Calgary is lustily booed when their pick is announced.
Well, Doug Risebrough, of course, the man who once took an Edmonton Oilers jersey and shredded it with his skates when he played for the Calgary Flames.
Oh, talk about holding the grudge.
I think Glenn Sather still holds the grudge against him for doing that.
Calgary Flames need a new coach. They also need a scoring forward, a big, tough defenseman. A small market team, in the opinion of Doug Risebrough, so a fiscal responsibility also coming into play. You don't want to waste a pick.
And Doug Risebrough is going to be a very busy guy in the next little while. They went for size last year. Big Chris Dingman, about 6'4", 6'5", from the Brandon Wheat Kings. Marty Murray is signed with the team now. He did not re-enter the draft. A small but gifted center who's going to have an opportunity to play in the organization. They're hoping Corey Stillman's going to come up from their farm team and be able to step into the lineup next year. Joe Nieuwendyk just won his big arbitration, but $1.9 million US. The Flames not too happy about that. They consider themselves a small market team. There's Guy Lapointe talking to Yuri Herdina at the draft table. Al McNeil, a lot of tradition with this Calgary Flame organization.
The other day when the Flames announced the signing of Marty Murray, Doug Risebrough gave a somewhat impassioned speech about how the Flames should be taking more homegrown talent, more players from the Western Hockey League. There are really no players from the Western Hockey League available at this stage of the draft who you'd want to take, so I wonder what he's going to do. That you'd want to take this high in the draft. They may well take some in the second and third rounds.
Now, this is the point in the draft where a lot of Europeans become very enticing. There's a lot of European talent available, but still some homegrown. If you're looking for a big defenseman, Jason Doig from the Laval Titan is still available. A skilled winger, Alexei Morozov from Soviet Wings, teammate of Nabokov, who just went.
Sean Brown, a defenseman from Belleville in the Ontario Hockey League. Denis Gauthier, also a possibility. But no big stars from the Western Hockey League still left.
On behalf of the Calgary Flames, we would like to thank the good hockey fans of Edmonton for the warm welcome which we always receive here.
Nice touch.
A few brownie points here. It's not going to work.
The Calgary Flames are proud to select from the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, de la Voltigeur de Drummondville, le joueur de défense, Denis Gauthier.
Denis Gauthier is the man from the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League.
Denis Gauthier Jr., a very hard-hitting defenseman. Doesn't fit the classic style of being a 6'4" or 220-pound guy, but at 6'1.5", 195-pound, plenty big enough, and this guy is abrasive. He is ornery. He gets in people's face, and he causes trouble.
The Hockey News Draft Preview Edition had him rated early to mid-second round. Why do you think he jumps up so far?
Well, mostly because of his physical style, and again, at this point, it is so subjective. There are so many teams that will look at players. It's not going to be a surprise at all from here on in the late first round if players that are rated by the Hockey News Draft Preview or by Central Scouting way down 35, 40, 45 get selected in the late first round. That's going to be the norm as we come along here. Denis Gauthier comes by his toughness on us. He's the grandson of former pro wrestler Jacques Rougeau, and the Rougeau is a big name in pro wrestling in Quebec. The Hockey News Draft Preview, Paul tail end says Gauthier is a consensus early second rounder, but it would surprise few if he snuck into the tail end of the first round, and that's exactly what he's done with the Calgary Flames. Guy Lapointe, former Montreal Canadian defenseman, is a big part of the scouting staff for the Calgary Flames now, and he's obviously well familiar with the Drummondville defenseman, Denis Gauthier Jr. He was the guy, Paul, I don't know if you remembered, Alexander Day got a celebrated 8-game suspension back when he was playing for the Victoriaville Tigre, and the reason he got that suspension was because he cross-checked Denis Gauthier Jr. in the head. Denis Gauthier Jr. is the kind of guy that inspires that in other players. He's in everybody's face. He talks a lot. He hits a lot. Uses his stick liberally.
Hey, so we'll look forward to a Calgary-Ottawa meeting maybe a couple of years down the road once Denis Gauthier comes along. Here's Doug Risebrough.
Well, Dougie, welcome to Edmonton. Such a nice welcome they gave you, too. Something about a shredded sweater back some years ago. Do you remember that incident?
I was explaining it to the commissioner, and he even laughed at it. So it was, we've always had high emotion up here. It's always been a fun place to play. So,
tell me, Denis Gauthier, some people might even think that he is a player like Doug Risebrough used to be. What do you think on that?
Well, we think of him as a real rugged player, a player that can really affect a change by just how physical and how committed he's going to be. And The similarity is that he's about 4 inches taller than me in a different position, so I don't know how close that is.
Well, they say he is a no-fear man, and so today might give him some type of a warning what to expect when he comes into this building. Thanks very much.
When life becomes a battleground, your mind is your best weapon. Dianetics. Get it, read it, use it, and learn how to free your full potential. Dianetics. Get your copy now, wherever paperbacks are sold, or call 1-800-652-4466.
This is me 5 years ago when I joined Pound Pinchers. And this is me now.
For permanent fat loss, diets don't work. You need to build muscle.
Before, after.
And the best way to do that is with the SoloFlex Rocket. No matter what shape you're in, you can rock your way to a slimmer figure and more muscle. So get on the rocket today and get on the road to permanent fat loss. The SoloFlex Rocket. Call now for a free brochure and video.
Baseball sure has changed, Junior.
Yeah, the hexagon replaced the diamond.
And can you imagine facing 3 pitches?
Emerson on base. Oh, the base ejector got him snoozing. He goes
Why did
sailing.
it all change?
All sport. Game just got too easy.
The unsurpassed taste of all sport. A third more carbs than Gatorade for energy could make a difference.
Next up,
your grandson's up.
Ken Griffey IV. He connects. It's going. Watch out, center point. Oh!
Center Bush got him.
He was robbed.
All sports body quencher. The game will never be the same. You shop.
I'd like to see you have a little bit of direction.
I have direction.
Yeah, towards the mall.
You drive.
Yo, you getting on the freeway?
You dress. And you party.
Hello.
What else is there?
Stuff.
Alicia Silverstone.
What is that?
A dress.
Clueless.
Says who?
Calvin Klein.
Rated PG-13. Starts Wednesday, July 19th at theaters everywhere.
Week number 2 of Canadian Football League action comes to you tonight at 8 o'clock. The Calgary Stampeders pay a visit to the Shreveport Pirates. The Stampeders attack paced by 4-time MVP Doug Flutie. He looks to move Calgary to a 2-0 record this year. The homestanding Pirates out to avenge that 23-point opening game loss to San Antonio. That's coming up tonight. CFL action at 8 Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. The Stampeders and the Pirates on the Deuce.
We bring you back after minor technical difficulties there. Speculation is that Larry Murphy is the defenseman that the Toronto Maple Leafs have obtained, and that the price for that was Dmitry Mironov and a draft pick, or Benoit Hogue, forward they acquired for Eric Fichaud at the trade deadline.
Well, this is interesting because Cliff Fletcher has denied that it's Larry Murphy who they picked up. Pat Burns has confirmed that it's Larry Murphy. At least that's the news we're getting from the floor. That's Gary Green there talking to Cliff.
The Boston Bruins will make the 21st selection in the 1995
Meanwhile, the
NHL
Boston
entry.
Bruins pick is next on stage. Bruins with pick number 21. Boston with 2 picks in the first round.
First pick courtesy of the Glenn Wesley free agent signing compensation with the Hartford Whalers. Now this is their own pick. And just before we talk about the Bruins for a moment, we saw in the pictures a few moments ago Craig Patrick, general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins, huddling with Pierre Lacroix, the general manager of the Colorado franchise. We're still waiting for a name. It is being called Colorado, though at this point not Denver, even though that is where they will be based. So the Boston Bruins set to make the 21st pick in the first round.
And the Bruins surprised some people last year by taking a goaltender in the first round. That wasn't the surprise. The surprise was that it was Yevgeny Ryabchikov, a Russian-developed goaltender. There were a couple of good North Americans also available. Last time they had 2 first-round picks, you go back to 1987. They took Glenn Wesley and Stefan Quintel. Wesley no longer with the team, nor is Quintel. Ray Bourque sure is an icon in Boston.
And he will continue to be, although there's a lot of speculation that Cam Neely won't. Harry Sinnen admitted that he's listening to offers for Cam Neely. He's going to have a tough time signing him.
Do you get the feeling the Bruins are going to stick defense, or do you think they'll be looking for somebody up front? Some pretty good defensemen still hanging around. Christian Laflamme from Beauport, Sean Brown from the Belleville Bulls.
And some gifted offensive players as well. Big Mark Chouinard from the Beauport Harfangs, the nephew of Guy Chouinard, former 50-goal man in the OHL, and the NHL rather. Chouinard, a 6'4" center. We have a look at a big 6'4" defenseman, Kyle McLaren.
Select from the OHL and the Belleville Bulls, Sean Brown.
Sean Brown is the man, and he is a big defenseman. 6'2.5", 196 pounds, and a bit of a late developer. He bounced around last year. He played in the OHL and also played in Junior A, which is one level below the Ontario Hockey League. But this year, he really arrived as a front-line defensive player, defenseman for the Belleville Bulls.
Right. Big 6'2.5", 196-pounder from Oshawa, Ontario. Plays it hard, 200 penalty minutes, just 2 goals and 18 points in 58 games. Was a 6th-round pick of the Belleville Bulls in their midget draft.
Like many big men, Bob, one of the concerns is that he has to work on mobility, foot speed, agility, that kind of thing. It's not unusual to see that in somebody 19 years of age who's that big.
And nobody plays. A stay-at-home physical defenseman, plays on the international size ice surface, the Quinte Sports Center in Belleville.
And will also be vying for a spot on Canada's national junior team, no doubt, if he goes back to junior hockey.
Very aggressive, tough kid. And that's the way Coach Larry Mavety, the Belleville Bulls, likes them. Mav could just scare you with the gravel in his voice.
Larry Mavety, a real character in Canadian junior hockey. One of those guys who sounds as though he just finished drinking a cup of sand before he talks to you.
And Sean Brown was a big part of his team, playing on that blue line, racking up a lot of penalty minutes and taking a very strong physical approach. And maybe, Paul, we're seeing today the dawn of a new era for the Boston Bruins. The big bad Bruins may be coming back into vogue. Kyle McLaren, 6'4", 210-pound defenseman, their first pick in the first round. And Sean Brown, a 6'2.5", 196-pounder, likes to throw his weight around. Their second pick for the Bruins, maybe going back to their big and bad days, and certainly they could use some size and strength because they've been far too small and far too ineffectual in the physical game over the years.
Bruins moving into a new building next year, and again, maybe harkening back to those days of the early 70s and the big bad Bruins with Derek Sanderson and Phil Esposito, Bobby Orr. Here's Rod Smith.
And Paul, I'm with the general manager of the Bruins, Harry Sinden. I gather you set out in this draft to get big defensemen. You certainly did.
Yeah, we had 6 of them rated in the top 10 players, and this is one of them. We took the other one at 9, so, and we're pretty happy about the size we got, and we're preparing for the day, I guess, when Raymond leaves the team, and everybody here is pretty happy about our 2 selections so far.
Yeah, as far as Raymond Bourque, that shouldn't be anytime soon. He'll be a Boston Bruin for a while.
Oh yeah. I mean, we got a few years left yet, but these boys probably got a couple of years before they make it too.
It's been a while, Harry, since you've had 2 first-rounders. I think back in '87. How would you compare this one? How pleased are you with what you got this time?
Well, we took 2 defensemen then too, and Wesley and Stefan Quintal. And as a matter of fact, back in '79, we took Bourque and McCrimmon. So it's not the first time we've done this. And I'd compare this, at this point, favorably to them. But although Bourque was, destined to be one of the best players the league's ever had.
Thanks, Harry.
Well, Sean, congratulations, first of all. During the lockout this year, I had the good fortune of being able to do some junior games on TSN in Canada and was able to watch you. I love the way that you like to bump and grind out there, and that seems to be a big part of your game.
Well, I think I play better when I'm bumping and grinding out there,
Now, you used to hear about the big bad Bruins. Are you excited about being a part of them right now?
Oh, very excited. It's a great organization, and I'm just happy to be drafted and happy to be with the Boston Bruins are.
Well, I think you're pretty excited, and the Boston Bruins have got to be, because they've got some big guys on defense right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Philadelphia Flyers will make the 22nd selection in the 1995 NHL entry draft.
A couple of interesting possibilities here, Bob. Peter Buzek who's a bit of a chance. We'll explain why in a moment. And Jason Doig, a big defenseman from Laval in the Quebec League, who's a bit of a project.
Goaltending is a situation that the Philadelphia Flyers would like to address short term and the long term. Perhaps Ron Hextall obviously had a great year. Big reason for the success that they did enjoy. And it's tough to out-goal Martin Brodeur, and obviously didn't do that against the New Jersey Devils, but nonetheless, and lots of big players along the way. Jason Bowen should be into the lineup next year.
Brian Boucher is a highly rated goaltender still available if they're looking for goaltending.
There's another guy, Mark Denis from Chicoutimi Saguenay's, is a good goaltender. So if it's goaltending they want, there are a number of them out there. If it's big defensemen they want, Jason Doig fits the bill. And I think it would be risky to take the Czech defenseman Peter Buzak here, a guy who was in a car crash and banged up his legs, broke his legs pretty badly. He's going to be operated on tomorrow here in Edmonton, and there's varying degrees as to whether his injuries are serious enough that it could end his career. There's other talk that he could be ready to play by midseason next year, but any team in the first round that would go after Buzak would be taking a considerable risk. May turn out to be a player, but may also be some
Peter's here,
high risk there.
Peter's here watching. And after the next round of surgery on his leg to repair the damage, he may have to take a year off. And there he is. Teams are still interviewing him. He was at the hotel with representatives from the different teams talking to him. He'd rather be down on the floor right now or a little closer to the action, I'm sure, than where he's sitting.
I'm pretty positive he would have been a top 20 pick overall if he'd not sustained an accident. It was a single vehicle accident. His car went off the road. He crashed into a tree. Broke his leg pretty badly, and the reports that we've got, and they're not official by any stretch of the imagination, but is that maybe some of the medical work that was done out in the Czech Republic will have to be done again here in Canada with the Edmonton Oilers team doctor.
Americans, Brian Boucher.
And there's the goaltending help that we talked about. Jerry Melnick, the chief scout. The Philadelphia Flyers, they needed goaltending help. They went out and got it in the form of Brian Boucher, who's got a pretty interesting story behind them. Brian Boucher was playing Tier 2 hockey for a team called Wexford in the Toronto area. All of a sudden, one day he just disappeared. Coach didn't know where he went. General manager didn't know where he went. Teammates didn't know where he went. Last anybody saw of him, he was getting in a limo and being spirited away and turned up in Tri-City. He was on the Tri-City Americans list. He had an opportunity to play in the Western Hockey League, and they wanted it kept a secret, and it was done in the dark of night and one of those clandestine affairs that sometimes happen in hockey. And then Boucher came in and really established himself with the Tri-City Americans, same team as Terry Ryan and Damon Lankow, who went in the first round.
I'm guessing his folks knew where he was, or that they were in on it to some degree. Boucher is big buddies with Brian Berard, the first pick overall in this draft.
He too is from Woonsocket, Rhode Island. He and Brian Berard were teammates at Mount St. Charles High School. Boucher didn't think he was getting enough playing time with the Wexford squad in Toronto, and that was one of the considerations for leaving. Because he was an American, he had the ability to go and play for the Tri-City Americans of the Western Hockey League.
Going to go out in left field and guess that this is the first time in the history of the National Hockey League 2 players from Woonsocket, Rhode Island have been taken in the first round.
I would go so far as to agree with you on that, although I'll tell you what, Mount St. Charles, the high school that Berard and Boucher attended, is one of the top hockey factories for producing young American hockey players. And now we have 3 goaltenders having gone in the first round as well.
Yeah, so that trend that started last year or 2 years ago, you could argue, has really continued this year. Teams solidifying themselves right back in a position some would argue is the most important.
And sometimes you'll see goaltenders get a run on goaltenders. We now have 3 taken. There's some other good ones out there. Aaron McDonald from the Swift Current Broncos and Jean-Sebastian Aubin from Sherbrooke could be the next ones to go.
Here's Gary Green. He has Bobby Clark with him.
Well, did you ever think that Woonsocket, Rhode Island was going to be the hockey hotbed, Bob?
Well, we've had some luck in the States, Gary. Obviously, we got LeClaire, who's from Vermont, and we have some players, and this boy played in the Western Canadian Hockey League and was outstanding, so we're pretty happy with him.
Tell me what you like about him the most.
Well, he's a big kid, and he's a stand-up goaltender. I don't think that you can play if you're real small now. I think you have to have some size, and he's got lots of time to develop. We've got good goaltending.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
From Edmonton, you're watching coverage of the 1995 NHL entry draft on TSN and ESPN2. We'll be back in a moment.
What's the reaction to new Donkey Kong Land? With 4 wild new worlds, 30 savage new levels, cool computer-modeled graphics, and more head-banging bad guys. It's all the excitement of Donkey Kong Country, now on Game Boy. This game is so hairy, you're gonna need shots.
Now that Pocahontas is playing everywhere, every kid wants to be John Smith.
Men, follow me!
And since John Smith found something magical on his journey, kids can find something magical too at Burger King, where they can get these fun action toys like Miko or Flit with the Pocahontas Kids Club hamburger meal, all for just $1.99. John Smith traveled the world for adventure. All your kids have to do is go to Burger King.
Burger King, get your burger's worth.
Dear Midas, my brakes became mushy on a steep mountain road. When they towed my van to the nearest service station, the guy said,
"It'll be a few days before we can fix it."
Then I had my van towed to Midas. Mike gave me a brake inspection, showed me what was wrong, and fixed it right away. When I returned to the camp where I work and told my story, folks said,
"You were smart going to Midas."
"Thank you." Cecilia Tygeson.
Hello from Plank Road, where our man Paul has a lesson in classic works of art. It's easy to spot an imitation if you know what to look for, especially when it comes to ice beer. Ice House is America's original ice beer. It's always ice brewed, so there's never any watered-down taste, just more of what you want in a beer. And it's the only one to come with this classic work of art on the label. Ice House, the American original. Thanks, and enjoy.
Seems like a while ago now. I guess it was, about an hour and a half ago. Brian Berard, #1 overall in this year's NHL draft, defenseman from the Detroit Junior Red Wings, now the Hartford Junior Whalers.
23rd in the 1995 NHL entry draft belongs to the Washington Capitals.
And from 1, we're down to 23. The Washington Capitals picking, and a deal that happened a long time ago, it seems like now. Scott Stevens' deal still coming into play. Washington with another pick as a result of the Scott Stevens deal, with Scott ending up in St. Louis and subsequently in New Jersey. 5 first-round picks. This will be the final one, and you can see what they've done with those picks.
David Poile said if he had to do it all over again, knowing what he knows now, he undoubtedly would have matched the offer the St. Louis Blues made for Scott Stevens way back when. He said at the time it seemed like the salaries were going so far, that salary seemed so far out of whack with everything else that was going on. And as it turned out, within a very short period of time, those kind of salaries became the norm in the National Hockey League. And David Poile said the draft picks don't even begin to make up for the absence we felt with Scott Stevens. And when the Washington Capitals saw Scott Stevens hoist that Stanley Cup for the New Jersey Devils, it was a very bitter moment for them. Poile's learned his lesson. Poile, along with Jack Button, Commissioner Gary Bettman, as they get set to make their pick. They took Big Brad Church with their last pick in this first round. Maybe they'll go across the pond now for a little skill and some European forwards available. Mikko Alomo, another Finnish player, a good friend of Aki Berg's.
Alexei Morozov, a right winger from Krylia Sovetov. Hey, out of left field, you want to take a smaller guy with a ton of skill. Christian Dubé, 5'11", out of Sherbrooke. A tremendously gifted player, but a little on the smallish size. That might keep him out of the first round. And it is hot in here.
Washington Capitals are pleased to select from the Turco organization in Finland, center Mika Ilomo.
It is Alomo who goes. So a little European flair. The order of the day for the Washington Capitals with their second pick in the first round.
Can play either center or left wing and gets invariably compared to Esa Tikkanen, another super pest from Finland. Talked to Alomo yesterday. He says, oh, no. He says, I'm not like Essa. I'm not as dirty as Essa is. I just do little things here and there. I'll tell you what, the kid's a real character. His English is pretty good. Very aggressive in terms of his nature, on and off the ice. He's a bit of a wisecracker, as everybody was standing around Aki Berg, the 3rd pick overall in today's draft, and Berg was getting his answers translated. Alomo was giving little asides for the reporters that were close enough to him to hear. When it was told that Aki Berg's parents were much smaller than he was, and that Aki Berg favors the style of Scott Stevens, Alomo came up with a few lines, something about Aki Berg being the illegitimate son of Scott Stevens' father, being his half-brother, and saying that's the way he plays. And
I don't know, Mr. Stevens did a little traveling over in Finland a few years ago.
And that was his point. He was laughing about it and saying, I think Mr. Stevens was in Finland. I think he was there, talking about Aki Berg. But he got a real zest for life, this kid. Good, strong, two-way hockey player.
He had 22 points in 28 games this year with Keiko 67, a team in Finland.
Not a giant at 6 feet, 180 pounds, but very strong on his feet.
And as most of the players at this stage of the draft are, a guy who you look to join the team a few years down the road. He's not going to step in to be an impact player. Unlike
Aki Berg, he has not started his military service. The required obligation in Finland for people when they become 18 years old is, they call it a year's service. It's actually 8 months. It runs from the beginning of January to the end of August. Aki Berg is in the midst of his military, will finish it up at the end of August and be available to the Kings for their training camp in the fall. Mika Alomo hasn't yet begun his military service, will not go into the service until January, so he will spend next year continuing to play hockey in Finland, fulfill his military obligation, and probably a year from now have an opportunity to go to the Caps.
With Caps GM David Poyle now, Alomo, I read, likes to copy the style of Mark Messier. How close is he going to be?
I like that comparison. I mean, if he can live up to half of that, we got ourselves one great player. We like the fact he's really a competitive kid, and one of the things that he does that the Capitals really need in a big way is scoring goals. And you can see, and one of the things that's been written about him is he likes to score goals, and that's something that we certainly like to add to our hockey club.
Sum up this day so far, beginning at the strike of midnight when you got Brendan Witt. You've had a pretty good day so far.
Yeah, it's been a real good day. We've signed two of our best young prospects, Nolan Baumgartner and Brendan Witt. I mean, we're an organization in the last few years. I mean, it really goes back to 5 years when we didn't match the offer sheet from the St. Louis Blues for Scott Stevens, and we got 5 extra draft picks, and that was the last one today. And so I think you're really going to see some new and young players in the lineup for the Washington Capitals. We already started the last couple of years, and with guys like Brendan Witt and Nolan Baumgartner, and hopefully what we've done today, I think it's really a young, up-and-coming team.
Well, you don't have Stevens, but it looks like you had a much bigger team in your hands now.
Well, we got some young guys that hopefully can slow Scott Stevens down. I mean, it was very envious of New Jersey and Scott raising that cup because that was our player, and maybe we can do it with players like Brendan Witt.
Thanks, David.
Okay, thank you.
And Alomo, like Berg, hailing from Turku, Finland, having had the opportunity to visit there once during the World Hockey Championship. No doubt hockey fans' favorite hangout is the Hamburger Boers restaurant, where they're sitting around talking hockey and talking about these two natives of Turku, hopefully taking the next step towards a big career in the NHL.
The Pittsburgh Penguins will make the 24th selection in the 1995 NHL entry draft.
Now, Paul, the report off the floor is that Larry Murphy's been traded from the Pittsburgh Penguins to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Hasn't been officially confirmed yet, but that apparently is the word. They've also lost Kjell Samuelsson to the Philadelphia Flyers. He signed yesterday or the day before with the Flyers. So certainly they're in the market for some defensemen, although nothing they get at this point is going to be able to step in and contribute immediately. And they've got some voids to fill on the blue line there for Coach Eddie Johnson, who will be back behind the bench next year after a lot of speculation that perhaps he wouldn't. Richard Park, a young center, they introduced him in the playoffs, got some playoff time. Chris Wells, just a 6'6" monster for the Seattle Thunderbirds. And Greg Andrusak, a power play specialist who could fill in some of the void on the blue line.
Well, if that trade that we have heard about is indeed accurate, you saw that graphic a few moments ago talking about the Pittsburgh defense. Strike two important names off of there. Murphy gone, as well as Shell Samuelson, who's gone.
Their big three on defense were the two Samuelsons, Ulf and Shell now gone, and Larry Murphy, the former Peterborough Pete and Toronto native, who looks as though he's heading home to the Maple Leafs.
And Dmitry Mironov rumored to be going the other way, although again that is not confirmed.
Also heard Benoit Hogue's name. It's Greg Malone, the former Pittsburgh Penguin, with the sweater, along with general manager Craig Patrick, as they get set to make the 24th pick, the third to last pick in the first round of the 1995 NHL entry draft here at the Edmonton Coliseum.
Pittsburgh Penguins are proud to select from the Soviet wings in Moscow, Alexei Morozov.
Alexei Morozov. And an interesting analogy here. We drew one earlier on to Jeff Friesen, but the scouts say that Morozov was inconsistent this year, which was exactly what they were saying about Jeff Friesen last year. And Friesen turned out to be a whale of a pick in the first round, a whale of a pick for the Sharks.
This kid has an enormous amount of natural skill. He's a good goal scorer. He's got great speed. Cut from the same kind of cloth as Alexei Kovalev of the New York Rangers. Guy who can break a game wide open with his offensive flair.
He missed the big exposure at the World Junior Hockey Championship because he was busy touring with the Moscow Wings, who were touring and playing clubs in the International Hockey League, where he distinguished himself. But I often wonder, if you missed that World Junior tournament, if that does hurt your stock, because that is such a drawing card for scouts to go and watch some of the greatest junior talent in the world, probably the greatest, for a nice 2-week period.
That's right, and the tournament next year is going to take place in the Boston area right after Christmas. Should be a great one. But you're right, Paul. The World Junior Tournament, the thing that's great about it is that you can't hurt yourself by going to it, because it's usually the 19 and 20-year-old players who excel in the tournament. If a 17 or 18-year-old draft-eligible player can go in there and do the job, then they skyrocket. But a guy like Brian Berard did not play particularly well at the World Junior Tournament in Red Deer this year. Wade Redden did. Berard still went #1 overall, so you can't hurt yourself at the draft. You can only improve yourself. And by being with the Soviet wings, Morozov and Nabokov, two guys that really would have helped the Russian team at Red Deer.
And Nabokov went to Chicago, and his teammate Alexei Morozov just drafted by the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Craig, tell me, is Morozov a lot like Jeff Friesen? That's what some of the players are saying, or some of the guys upstairs are saying.
Well, I don't know about Jeff Friesen, but we think he's a really talented player who can play pretty soon in the National Hockey League, and he's got good size and great skills.
Tell me, there's some rumblings going around, some rumors that you are involved with the deal right now with the Toronto Maple Leafs. In fact, there's been one report that Larry Murphy has been traded. Any truth to that?
We haven't made any trades at this time. We've been talking to a lot of people, but right now we've made no trades.
Got a feeling we're coming back to see you. Thank you, Craig.
So as of this moment, Larry Murphy going from Pittsburgh to Toronto still being denied by both parties.
Still unofficial anyways.
More still to come as we wind our way down in the first round of the 1995 NHL entry draft. Brian Berard going first overall, followed by Wade Redden and Aki Petteri-Berg. The big three defensemen as predicted.
We got 90 seconds here.
Don't get the classes I want. Won't graduate on time. Can't believe they're raising tuition. This is not working. But this will. Classes I need to graduate on time, and no surprises about tuition. Works for me.
Call ITT Technical Institute at 1-800-942-0099. That's 1-800-942-0099.
When life becomes a battleground, your mind is your best weapon. Dianetics. Get it, read it, use it, and learn how to free your full potential. Dianetics. Get your copy now, wherever paperbacks are sold, or call 1-800-652-4466.
89% of top athletes polled prefer more carbos. With 33% more carbos than Gatorade, it's Powerade.
I know if you really care about somebody, nothing else should matter. But it does.
Sometimes getting close to him is all I think about.
I expect her to sweat if she's running a marathon, but not when we're close to each other.
Well, you just can't get close to a guy if he smells.
Get a little closer with Arid XX, the anti-odor antiperspirant. Arid XX helps keep you extra, extra dry.
I trust Arid.
So the next order of business.
The 25th selection in the 1995 NHL entry draft will be made by our NHL franchise in Denver, Colorado.
A team that does not yet have a nickname or a logo or colors, so they've adopted the NHL colors and lettering for this draft. The Colorado whatevers, and just in case you were wondering, there was an NHL franchise in Colorado at one time, the Rockies, and the last time that Colorado had a first-round pick was back in 1981. Joe Cirella was their last first-round pick. He was taken 5th overall, went on to have a pretty solid NHL career.
Well, there you go. What are they going to be called? The Avalanche, the Black Bears, you name it. They're still coming up with a name. They've obviously got to do a lot of work in a short period of time. The NHL's return to Denver, when you look at their offensive defenseman that they're after, that would be, a lot of people are saying that they're trying to get Chris Pronger from the Hartford Whalers.
Dave Draper, their chief scout, legendary in Canadian junior hockey circles for his ability to sniff out talent. He was with Canada's national junior program for quite a few years, filling that role. Great youth and talent in the system. Landon Wilson could be a good one, and some great young players on this team, the former Quebec Nordiques.
Well, a big trade a year ago, obviously the Wendell Clark, Matt Sundin deal. Landon Wilson, you see there in the system. An opportunity to step in and play for them next year. He was traded for the Todd Warner end of that transaction. There's lots of speculation that they're looking for a veteran goaltender in the form of a Bill Ranford, an offensive defenseman who can quarterback the power play, burgeoning talent like Chris Pronger. And I believe that Pierre Lacroix, as I said before, the Chicago Blackhawks are going to be very aggressive in trying to win and win now. I also believe that the Colorado franchise will be doing exactly the same thing. They'll be addressing their shortcomings, which is a little more stability in net and a little help on the blue line, especially on the power play. And they'll be going after those players and going after them hard this summer. You can expect a lot of activity for the folks in Colorado.
Now, if they were still the Quebec Nordiques, Mark Crawford, the head coach, the NHL Coach of the Year, as a matter of fact, just named the other day, a number of fine players from the Quebec Major Junior League still available. Jason Doig, a defenseman, Christian Laflamme.
Mr. Governor, Mr. Commissioner, to all the NHL governors, on behalf of ComSat Corporation, I would like to thank the NHL for giving us this opportunity. Thank you. Also, on behalf of our President and Governor, Mr. Charlie Lyons, and the whole family of the Colorado Hockey Club, we would like to thank our fans for their support that they've given us already. And to our fans in Quebec, thank you for your help throughout the years. Merci pour ces belles années. And to you people here in Edmonton, thanks for this great hospitality. Dave Draper.
Colorado NHL are extremely proud to select Marc Denis from Les Saguenay de Chicoutimi.
So they go the route of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League and pick up a goaltender.
Well, it's funny that they would do that because there's been a lot of speculation that in an attempt to get a proven netminder like Bill Ranford, they may have to give up Jocelyn Thibault, their very fine young goaltender from the Sherbrooke junior team that played so well last year for them in Quebec. And if that happens and Thibault has to go along the way to make room for a more proven talent like Bill Ranford, then they would still have a great young French-Canadian goaltender in the system in the form of Marc Denis.
Had a 3.48 goals against average last year with Chicoutimi, and Chicoutimi is a team that has developed some great goaltenders over the years, going back as far as the Chicoutimi Cucumber. George Vezina, the late great, the NHL goaltending award named after George Vezina.
Marc Denis, the fourth of four tremendous goaltending prospects from the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. We've seen two of them go in the first round. Jean-Sébastien Giguère to the Hartford Whalers, Martin Biron to the Buffalo Sabres. And now the Colorado team, which is a team to be named later, picks up Marc Denis from the Chicoutimi Saguenayens.
Other great goaltenders to come from Chicoutimi. Felix Potvin, who, of course, the Cat plays with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Eric Fichaud, who the Toronto Maple Leafs drafted a year ago. Sent to the New York Islanders, rather.
So the hand rubbing is over and the hand clapping can start for the Denis family.
From Blueberry Country, Chicoutimi.
And I would be very surprised to see them let Jocelyn Thibault get away, a young man who many feel could step in and be one of the premier goaltenders in the National Hockey League when he finishes developing. And in fact is maybe almost finished developing, just ready to be right there. But that may be the price of progress.
Pierre Lacroix, you are now knee-deep in young, talented goaltenders. Are we to assume that one is going to be dealt like Thibault?
Well, no. Our needs were really to have a little bit more depth as far as goaltending, and we're very happy to have been able to select this young kid.
Are you interested in acquiring a more experienced goaltender like a Bill Ranford?
Well, with the young and good group and good quality of young men that we have in net, all the possibilities are there for us.
One final thing. I've heard Avalanche, Black Bears, Cougars. Any idea, any hint what the name is going to be of this Colorado team?
No, as long as our team performed like they did over the last year, that's our main concern. We have great people over there to take care of the name, so we're not concerned at all.
Thanks, Pierre.
Thank you.
Name, colors, what do you hear, Bob?
Team to be named later. That's all the same names that Rod just mentioned. It won't be the Rockies, though. Baseball team's got that one, and the former National Hockey League franchise did.
Round of the 1995 NHL entry draft. The 26th pick belongs to the Detroit Red Wings.
So the last pick in round number one belonging to the Detroit Red Wings, a team many felt will go on to win the Stanley Cup this year. They were disappointed in the final against New Jersey. I'm Paul Romanuk with Bob McKenzie, taking you through this first round. Has anything surprised you? We expected it to be the year of the defenseman. It has turned out to be the first time ever three defensemen have gone 1, 2, 3 in the draft. Aside from that, any surprises at all?
Well, while we pointed out that this year defenseman, I think just before we go on, the Detroit Red Wings could well be looking for defensemen here. They got a big Russian named Maxim Kuznetsov, 6'6", is one of the guys they were hoping maybe they could get. He's still available. They might just take him. As for the surprises today, well, we've got the Alexander McGillney trade, which is obviously a big one for the Vancouver Canucks. Buffalo Sabres are beginning the makeover, rebuilding of their franchise. Dale Howardchuk is signed with the St. Louis Blues, and there's a lot of talk that maybe Jeff Courtnall and Brian Noonan, two more free agents, will soon be joining Dale Howardchuk with the St. Louis Blues. So there's a lot of activity today, and I don't think by any stretch of the imagination the trades and the moving of big players is close to being finished.
Needs for the Detroit Red Wings, you saw big defenseman mentioned there. They have a couple percolating in the minors, but Jason Doig would be a guy available still from the Quebec Major Junior League. He's 6'3", 216 pounds, has all the tools but no toolbox, some would tell you.
Well, Doig has got a lot of raw skill. But the Detroit Red Wings, as I said, the 6'6" Russian defenseman Maxim Kuznetsov, who's a bit of a wild card in this draft because a lot of people didn't see him for very long this year, is a consideration. We saw in the system Anders Eriksson, the big Swedish defenseman they took in the first round a couple of years ago. They signed him last night, and actually a day or two ago, and they expect to have him in training camp this fall. So there's no question that Scotty Bowman, who just picked up a new 3-year contract to be the coach and director of player personnel on that team, are going to begin some sort of a makeover. They realized they weren't big enough. They realized they didn't have the kind of grit and depth that they required to beat the New Jersey Devils in the Stanley Cup final. So we are going to see some changes there, and the pick that they make today won't obviously impact directly on their performance next season, but it's all aimed in the general direction of getting them bigger and stronger, and that's been the theme throughout today's draft. That and the goaltenders, 4 goaltenders taken in the first round.
I saw Glenn Sather of Edmonton talking with Bob Clark of Philadelphia there a few moments ago, see if anything develops there.
Yeah, they're deciding where they're going to go for Chinese food after the draft today, probably.
Nothing more than that, eh?
You never know.
The Detroit Red Wings are proud to select from Moscow Dynamo of the Russian Junior League, Maxim Kuznetsov.
And you called it, partner. They go for big-time size back in the blue line. There's a look at what kind of size.
Kuznetsov is something of a wild man. He's a guy who isn't at all afraid to mix things up and really get into it. And when you're as big as he is, 6'5", 200 pounds, he's obviously got to put on a little weight, but a very intriguing prospect. Very nasty hockey player. This guy really likes to mix it up. He'll beat you any way he can. He'll lay the lumber on you. He'll pound at you physically.
And by the way, you saw those point totals, 0 points. Point totals were not available. It's not that he had 0 points.
Scotty, after our discussion, after Game 3 in the finals, it doesn't surprise me that you're going for some size and strength here.
No, they when you get draft 26, of course, Gary, there's a lot of players that you don't get that you wanted to get, and there was a couple just before that they were looking at, the one that Pittsburgh took. But he's a defenseman that our scouts saw play quite a bit last year, and he does have the size. We're still trying to get a little bigger, and of course he's 2 or 3 years away from coming here, but we know that.
Can we expect any more changes this summer?
We'll be talking a lot of potential deals. I'm sure we'll have 2 or 3 to do, but not a lot of changes, but some.
Thanks, Scotty.
Bye.
Maxim Kuznetsov with Jim Nill, chief scout, and assistant general manager Kenny Holland, and he just towers over Kenny Holland, the former NHL and minor pro goaltender. They did not see, a lot of teams did not see a lot of Kuznetsov. He did not show up at a lot of the big tournaments, and there's a lot of varying reasons as to why he wasn't there. Some scouts believe that the Russians are just very protective of some of the younger players, especially some of the better ones, and didn't want to expose them to the North Americans NHL scouts. Others say that he's a discipline problem and that he didn't really fit in, and that he's not regarded highly in Russia because he is so rough and so nasty that he doesn't fit in with what the prototypical way of playing skill hockey is all about over there.
Interesting to hear Scott Bowen refer to the fact he's a guy for 2 or 3 years down the road, and that's something to keep in mind when you're watching the National Hockey League draft. It's interesting in a way when you hear people talking about, well, what do the Washington Capitals need next year? What are team needs? Well, really what you should be talking about are team needs 3 and 4 years down the road, because rarely is there a player in the draft, save for an Eric Lindros type player, who's going to step in the next season and fill that void and fill that need.
That concludes the first round of the 1995 NHL entry draft. Thank you.
So the first round is wrapped up with the 1995 NHL entry draft. We'll be back with more, but on the way, let's review the first round.